All right, so I'm going to stand here as if I'm on a podium, and which I think we require a little bit of formality at the beginning today, because you're my absolute heroes, hands down. When I was given the opportunity to come and talk to you, I've been actually actively trying since COVID started to find a way to sort of frequently talk to the NHS. I think you guys are amazing. I think we've clapped enough for you over the last, yeah, but I'm clapping again myself. I think you're amazing in every possible way. So I also think it's extremely difficult what you do. My personal story is I lost my wonderful, wonderful son to a surgeon that was trying to save his life. Most people wouldn't think of it this way. The surgeon made a mistake that took my son's life, but I saw it as he never, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, okay, I'm going to a patient, right? He didn't. He was trying really hard. He was really, really treating him as his child when things went wrong, and tried to save him. But sometimes things happen, and I think working in the healthcare and medical profession makes you have to recognize somehow that this will happen, sadly. And for many of us, other than you, it would be devastating, right? And I speak to a lot of people that are in that mindset, whether psychologists or psychiatrists working with very, very extreme cases of unhappiness, or people in intensive care units, or people taking care of children in intensive care units. And it's just extremely, extremely difficult. And perhaps it's almost inappropriate to talk about happiness in that state. But my personal view is that you absolutely need to work on your happiness. And in my mind, I believe that for people like you who are saving lives, happiness is almost your duty. It's not even a privilege. It's part of, how athletes would wake up in the morning and go to the gym and exercise and be fit because that's how they perform their job. I think for people like you to be in a state of happiness, as I will define it in a few minutes, is entirely a responsibility, okay? And so that's how I want to start the positioning. But then when you talk about a responsibility, you need to be able to say, at least if you make me responsible, then make me capable, right? Allow me to actually find that happiness in a predictable way, like the athletes can find fitness in a predictable way. And that's been my life's work. I mean, I've done a few things in my life that most people would be incredibly proud of. I had a very, successful business career all the way up to being the chief business officer of Google X, which I believe is one of the most impactful and joyful jobs on the planet. But throughout that career, I started multiple businesses myself and all of that, and achieved what everyone thinks is what success is. Had the money and the cars and the silly stuff that I gave all away. On the other hand, when my son left our world, I started with that mission. The mission at the beginning was 10 million happy, and the objective was very selfish, to be honest. My objective was simply to share what Ali, my son, taught me with the world. And if I did that, I believed, if 10 million people got his essence, what he taught me through a book, then, through 6 degrees of separation in 70 years, everyone will get a bit of Ali in them. It was a very selfish and also very desperate attempt to hold on to him, if you know what I mean. I needed to write down what he taught me. And then the mission exploded. It's now 1 billion happy. And if you ask me, most people will say, so 1 billion happy is your biggest pride in life? No, I think 1 happy is my biggest pride in life. And I don't know if you imagine, I'm sure you feel it, or you will feel it every time you save a life. Believe it or not, happiness saves lives too. Or let's say unhappiness takes lives, right? And so in a very interesting way, I feel that if you want, I'm in the preventive medicine industry. of sort of removing the stress from people to the point where they can actually find a way to a happier life, and hopefully that saves you guys a few patients, basically. I mean, that's the idea. Now, so if happiness is a fitness exercise, it needs to be predictable. And as a young person, I did not manage to find that predictability. I was extremely successful, had everything I could dream of, and I was absolutely miserable. Am I doing something?
No, you're doing nothing wrong.
Okay. So, whoops. Sorry. Oh, I can do that. So I worked on the problem as an engineer, okay? And engineers are those weird creatures that, in a very interesting way, we only understand the world in a very set structure, okay? We have a very, you tell me to work on something and I will freeze, okay? Until you give me a very clear problem definition. So I need a problem statement. I need to understand all of the different parameters that I need to work on. I need to get sort of sample readings of how the machine you're trying to get me to invent works, and so on and so forth. And then eventually I can make it work and then make it repeatable. And to address happiness in that way was a very unusual approach, but it was the only approach that could register in my head. I could simply not understand any of the mysticism, if you want, of happiness teachers. I still don't. Between you and I, I'm working on a book with a wonderful, wonderful co-author, a young British lady called Alice Law, and she's much more on the spiritual side of things. I am very spiritual, but she writes in a very beautiful way, okay? And when I read it, I still go like, what does that mean, Alice? I really don't get it, okay? But it touches my heart somehow. Now I've achieved that. At the time, it didn't touch anything. So I would sit in front of a guru or a happiness teacher or a spiritual teacher or a psychological whatever, I don't know, shrink, and I couldn't get a thing. So I worked on it as an engineer, and the way I worked on it is I decided, first I had a very interesting discovery, and that discovery led me to work on mathematics and equation. The discovery was I was sitting in a coffee shop in Seattle, and I was listening to Supertramp. If any Supertramp fans? Okay, only two, yeah. 3, right, there you go. What are the rest doing with their lives? Anyway, so Supertramp have a song that is called the Logical Song. And the Logical Song starts with, when I was young, it seemed that life was so wonderful. Basically saying that when you're a child, everything is so easy. Everything's happy, right? And then they sent me away to teach me how to be sensible, logical, critical, cynical, responsible, and all of those wonderful things that we have learned in school and in the mainstream of the modern world. And basically that turns your life upside down. Yes, you do become more logical and more cynical and more critical, and then in that process you end up feeling a little less happy. And so I stopped, because that was the story of my life. I think it's the story of all our lives. The story of my life is, there was a point in my life where I stopped being happy, okay? And I realized, I went back in time and I said, okay, that point, by the way, was around age 26. I started to go back in time, and I found out that I was happy when I was 16, when I was happy when I was 6, I was happy when I was 6 months old, I was happy when I was 0, okay? And that was an enormous discovery for me, because at the time I had the resources to try and buy happiness, but happiness was not to be bought. What I was actually finding out was that happiness was always inside me. And you may think of this as crazy, but children, and you work a lot with children are always happy, right? They are only unhappy when there is a reason for unhappiness. If a nappy gets wet, the child is unhappy. If you change the nappy, the child is lying on its back and giggling, right? Doesn't want Xboxes, doesn't want likes on Instagram, doesn't want promotion, doesn't want anything, right? Our innate nature is we're calm and peaceful, and we're easy with life. We don't need entertainment, we don't need things, we don't need luxury, we don't need any of the stuff that now is associated with happiness. None of that is needed, okay? And so if you assume that this is true, you can imagine us humans as almost like your mobile phone, right? It comes out of the box and it works perfectly well, and then you start to install weird software on it, right? And really what ends up happening is that it starts to become a little sluggish and it doesn't make sense, and things go wrong, and if you change it to Chinese, you're toast, right? And right, and that the thing is, we're like that. We're born happy, and then we add stuff on top of our value system, our belief system, our approach to life, our engagement in life, and all of those things make us successful as per the promise, but they also make us unhappy. And that doesn't need to be the case, right? As I said, the child is happy for as long as there is no reason for unhappiness. You too, by the way. If we finish this event today and you went outside and it was sunny, your partner didn't say something stupid today, and your work is going okay, you don't actually need that promotion or that car or that you don't need anything. If nothing is wrong, sort of, your state is calm and peaceful and contented. So happiness in that case is, and I know it sounds like a silly statement, but I think it's very profound. Happiness is the absence of unhappiness. Okay, it's not the things that we get into our life that make us happy. It's the things that we remove from our life that stop making us unhappy. And if in the end, if you stop being unhappy, what's left behind is happy. Okay. Now I give you a couple of seconds while I sip this coffee, because coffee makes me happy. Just think about that for a second, please. Because think about moments when you're unhappy. These are not your innate nature. They are triggered by something from outside you, correct? Awake for 3 more minutes. So what does that mean? That means for an engineer that suddenly I found the algorithm I could write to run the software. Okay, because if I could write that algorithm that says, okay, help me define all of the different moments that trigger my unhappiness, okay, and if I can find those moments, I will remove them one by one, then I'm done. The software is done, right? And I really treated my brain that way, and I know it sounds crazy, but it worked. So I basically took as many readings as I could of the times in my life where I felt happy. Okay, it was 2004 specifically. I wrote down 92 data points. Okay, on those data points are things like I feel happy when I have a cup of coffee. I feel happy when my daughter smiles. I feel happy when I learn something new. I feel happy when I'm with wonderful people, right? And I attempted to find the trend line, the equation that describes all of those moments, because in my engineer's mind, if I could find that trend line, then this is happiness and everything else is unhappiness. Equation, solution found. Okay. And believe it or not, there is something common across all of the moments in your life where you felt unhappy. Okay. And most of us don't realize that. And when you realize it, I hope it will change your life. When I realized that unhappiness is actually a choice. Okay. And the common thing between every moment in your life where you felt happy is really straightforward. It is a moment, regardless of what life was doing at that moment. It was a moment when you were okay with life, with what life was doing. Can you understand that? Huh? Rain doesn't make you happy or unhappy. Rain makes you happy if it's your ex-boyfriend's wedding. Okay, it makes you very unhappy if it's your wedding. It's the same exact event. Okay, but the way you look at it in your head, you compare that event to your expectation. Okay, he should be miserable for the rest of his life. Rain is good. Okay, and when you see it that way, suddenly you realize that almost everything that happened in your life that made you unhappy was not just about the event that made you unhappy. It was as much about the event as it was about what you wanted. And in a very interesting way, and I say that with respect, that basically means that for many of us, that unhappy moment is just like a 6-year-old. It's like you want to go to McDonald's and mommy doesn't want to give you junk food. And so you cry like, mommy, I want McDonald's, right? Doesn't matter if McDonald's is good for you or not. It doesn't matter if mommy can afford it. It doesn't matter. Huh? But the child wants McDonald's. Okay, so the child becomes unhappy, right? And we we do this so often in our life that it becomes second nature. We look at everything in life and we say, don't like it, not happy. Don't like it, not happy. Okay, you take that and put it in a mathematical equation, and the equation becomes your happiness is equal to or greater than the difference between the events of your life and your expectations of how life should be. Okay, so to simplify it in simple words, happiness is events minus expectations. It's not events alone, It's not expectations alone. It's not even the events, by the way. It's your perception of the events, okay? And it's not even the realistic expectation of what happens in life, okay? It's your own made-up expectations and ambitions and wishes and hopes and beliefs. You compare events to expectations and they match, okay? So if the event meets or beats your expectations, something amazing happens. Probably the most phenomenal biological function ever. Your brain shuts up. The minute the events meets your expectations, your brain goes like, okay. Okay? Even though it should be talking, by the way, it should be celebrating and dancing and saying, oh my God, that's amazing, right? Like I am at 30,000 feet in the sky going to America, like, oh my God, right? But your event goes like, yeah, seat is too small, right? Right? It's really quite something, huh? That's your brain's tendency. So event meets your expectations, brain shuts up, you're happy. Okay? Event misses expectation, brains goes into hyperdrive. Okay? Your partner says something hurtful on Friday. You wake up Saturday morning, and instead of saying, okay, new day, new life, you go like, 4 p.m. yesterday. Yeah, that clip, play that again. Yeah, torture me with it. Right? It's the Netflix of unhappiness. Just keep playing it over and over and over. Unhappiness on demand. Right? And that's basically because the way your partner spoke wasn't the way you wanted them to speak. Very simple. Now, with that, we can create a few definitions. And I think definitions for engineers are very important. Definition number one is, what is happiness? Happiness in that case is not what they've been selling us. Understand this, huh? All of the fancy cars and the beautiful clothes and all of that, that's not happiness at all. Happiness in that case is event meets or beats expectations, which basically means I am okay with life as it is. This moment is fine. And believe it or not, if you recall back the moments where you felt pure happiness, they were moments when you were sitting on a beach or with a loved one or whatever, and you were like, that's it. Don't want anything more. Don't want anything less. Want this moment to last forever. Okay? And that calm and peaceful contentment, believe it or not, is way more valuable than what the modern world sells us. The modern world sells us excitement, elation, reward, pride, all of those other positive feelings as well. Huh? You buy a new thing and you go like, oh my God, pretty shoes, look at me, right? And yeah, you get that jolt of what? Dopamine. And that dopamine makes you feel good. It's also a feel-good hormone. It's not a happiness hormone, right? And then that moment goes away, and then you need another pair of shoes, another, exercise at the gym, and another and another and another. Why you know this better than me? Dopamine as an excitatory keeps you excited, and basically tells your body, I want more of what you're doing. It's good for the survival of the species, if you want. And as a result of that, what happens is your brain receptors downregulate for dopamine, so you don't feel the presence of it anymore. So you want another shot and another shot and another shot. And I'm not a doctor, but my analysis of why people got depressed in the early lockdowns was basically we were so highly dependent on dopamine shots to find our happiness that when they locked us down, we said, okay, what do I do now? How do I feel happy? Okay. Now, dopamine on one side, by the way, nothing wrong with fun. I'll come back to that in a second. Dopamine on one side is just fun and excitement and elation. These are not genuine happiness. Happiness on the other side is what? Is serotonin. Okay? And serotonin basically, even though the internet would say otherwise, I think serotonin is the only true happiness hormone. And it does exactly what the equation says. Serotonin basically says, I'm okay with everything. I scan the world around me. It seems okay. Parasympathetic nervous system engage. Okay? And we're going to sit down, digest our food, relax, reflect, close our eyes, sleep, whatever. Okay? And that, believe it or not, is as important for our survival as the adrenaline that makes us run out of a tiger, as the cortisol that stressed us, right? Why? Because without that ability to sit and relax and reflect and replenish and rebuild, you burn out of chronic stress and your body completely collapses and you no longer are able to save kids. Okay? And so my first call for you is to say, you absolutely need to have steady doses of serotonin in your life. You absolutely need to have steady doses of that calm and peaceful contentment, regardless of what's happening in life, or hopefully because of what's happening in life. So we'll come back to how to do this in a minute. Go back to fun, just not to demonize fun. I have more fun than all of you combined. Of course, you're medical students, right? But the truth is, I don't use fun as a painkiller. Do you understand the meaning? So if you're unhappy, you're unable to find that peace, something is bothering you, something is stressing you, and you go out and try to seek fun, what normally happens is that the constant dopamine addiction makes you more addicted to dopamine. So it's basically, like popping a couple of, paracetamols to remove a headache. And then as soon as the effects wear down, you try two more, and then you go from normal strength to maximum strength too, right? And basically what you're trying to do is to numb the pain, but not solve the problem. And as we go through those cycles, we end up in a place where fun is working against us and against our happiness because it's an excitatory and serotonin is a calmer, right? Now, what's the answer in that case? I do the opposite. When I feel unhappy or stressed, and we all do without exception, I sit down and I reflect on what's making me unhappy. What is the reason for unhappiness? And then I remove it. Okay. And when I remove it, my life is now calm and peaceful and contented. I'll tell you how we remove it in a bit. Okay. And then with that, I add fun as a supplement, as a vitamin. Right? It makes my life better that I'm calm and peaceful and contented. And I'm also enjoying my life and my body and my friends and my loved ones and so on and so forth. Right? So that's an important technique. So what I'm asking you to do, so call number one is more serotonin in our life in a steady way, almost on daily basis, and we'll talk about techniques for that. Call number two is, yes, complement that with a lot of fun and happiness and funny moments and joy. And I always say, and a dose of Michael McIntyre before you go to bed. Okay? So something that basically makes your life enjoyable on top of the calm. Third definition, and I think the most important definition of them all, is the definition of unhappiness. Okay, so if happiness is events equal or beating expectations, unhappiness is events missing expectations. Okay, what happens when events miss expectations is that your system engages your sympathetic nervous system, and it basically says something's wrong. Okay, something doesn't look like it is what I want it to be for my optimal performance in life. And that's really, really interesting, because basically your brain could have said that as a thought in your head. It doesn't. What it does is actually it engages an emotion. And an emotion, basically a sadness, regret, fear, worry, whatever that is normally triggered by a thought in your head after the physiological cycle has gone. Okay, so you get the normal physiological cycle. Insula engages your, glands, secretes cortisol or whatever, and you get stressed and you respond to it and so on. That normally takes 90 seconds. Okay, again, I can't say that to you, but this was really taught to me by Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, which is one of my favorite neuroscientists in the world and a very good friend, that the physiological cycle from a trigger of a negative emotion to the hormones being flushed out of your system is 90 seconds. Okay, and she did a big study around that, and then I asked her, and I said, she was on my podcast, and I said, so Jill, how then can people be angry for 17 years? Okay, and she said, well, they regenerated every 90 seconds. Okay, which is quite eye-opening. That when you're again, I use the partner example on Friday because it's very common that we sometimes quarrel or argue or whatever. That partner example on Friday, for you to be angry with your partner 90 seconds later, you need to remember the quarrel. So it happens in the rational brain, not in the reptilian brain anymore. Okay, and when those things happen, they happen as what? Which is really the most eye-opening discovery of my research. Unhappiness that responds to something that didn't go as we wanted it to go, believe it or not, is a survival mechanism. Okay, it's, as a matter of fact, the ultimate survival mechanism beyond just running away from the tiger. Why? Because what's happening here is your brain is saying, change something, this is not good for me. Okay, change something, this is not good for me, is events missing expectations. And if we manage to deal with it, believe it or not, as we deal with all other survival mechanisms, it would be nothing more than a few seconds. Okay, so as a happiness practitioner myself, trying to reach 1 billion happy, as I always say publicly, my job includes that I need to become the Olympic champion of happiness. Okay, and to become the Olympic, I practice. I promise you, I practice like an athlete. Okay, And to become the Olympic champion of happiness, you know, an athlete that's doing long jump, for example, does not improvise every time they're doing the long jump. They learn a technique and they repeat the technique and repeat the technique and repeat the technique. And all of you know that the more you repeat the technique, your neuroplasticity makes it second nature for you, correct? So the technique I use is something I call the happiness flow chart, which is going to be coming out in my book that's out next week, 26th. So the happiness flow chart is a very systemic approach to happiness, basically to say a few things. So the first thing to recognize is, for most of us, the most important thing, especially for you, is to be completely aware of your state. Okay? So if you're stressed, you need to stop and say, what's this? What am I feeling? Is my shoulder aching? You know, am I annoyed with my, you know, with the nurse that I'm working with? Is this case getting on my emotional side? What's happening? Okay, every time you feel that you're off your natural balance, you absolutely have to acknowledge it. I would say immediately, if you can. With training, you can do this. And literally in my work, I mean, my work is very different than yours, but it used to be very stressful as well, having the responsibility of running a big part of Google and so on. Okay, I promise you, ask my teams. It was very frequent, not very, but it was frequent that I would be in the middle of a meeting, and then 7 minutes in, I would say, guys, I'm really sorry, I need 5 minutes alone. Okay, and basically I would take 5 minutes, I would close my eyes, I would reflect, I would understand what's going on, because it was much better for the 1 hour meeting for me to reflect and be in a good state, okay, than it would be to just run with it. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, you know, like, you know, if you've ever had a sore throat, the minute it starts to tickle a little, what do? You stop immediately and you say, oh, no, hold on, I need to do something about this, right? Why do we do this, by the way, as a physiological response? Is because our health is our optimum form of survival and engagement in the world, right? If I'm not healthy, I'm not going to be able to do well. Now, this goes back to what I started our conversation with. Your happiness is your duty, okay? Because if you're not happy, as per the definition that we agreed now, happy as in calm and peaceful and contented and completely engaged and present and okay with life as it is, despite the challenges that life might throw at us, only in that state is the optimum state of your performance and survival. Okay, so when I'm calm and peaceful and contented in my business, when people came in with problems, I didn't bounce over the walls, I didn't make mistakes, I sat calmly, I understood the problem, I was okay with the fact that there is a problem, I dealt with it, and I did the best that I could. Now, when it comes to you, it could not be more important to find that calm and peace and be okay with things. Now, so happiness flow chart starts from, I need to acknowledge the fact that I feel this way. Step one. And I would ask you to please not just acknowledge it, but embrace it. Embrace the fact that you're human. Okay? Believe it or not, the only moment in your life you felt alive was a moment when you had an emotion. None of us has a memory of the algebra equation that was presented by the teacher at 4th grade, right? You don't have memories of anything that is cerebral. Okay? Your memories, the moments where you actually lived, are all in the heart. And we're all human, including the Surgeon General and the CEO and everyone, okay? We're all human, we all feel emotions. But the modern world is telling us, that's vulnerable, that's weak. How can I trust you with my case if you're emotional, okay? Yeah, maybe some people may not trust you. Maybe they should go trust someone else, because if they want to trust someone that doesn't have emotions, good luck to find that. Everybody has emotions. Or you can actually be open enough to say, like I did, chief business officer of the business, and I would tell people, I'm sorry, my mind is not in the right place. I'm negative. If I look at your work now, I will make negative decisions. Give me a minute to be centered. Okay? And that doesn't make me weak. It makes me stronger. You understand? So step 2 is we've embraced those emotions. Step 3 is the most critical step of your life, is to distinguish between the event and the story. Okay? For most of us, We think that's what's happening in our heads is what the world is telling us. It's not true at all. Okay? Your brain, I dare say, and I apologize because you're incredibly intelligent people, has never, ever, ever, ever told you the truth. Not once in your entire life has your brain told you the truth. Now take that statement to heart, please. Okay? Your brain tells you what it thinks is the truth. And what it thinks is the truth is blurred by its own perceptions, okay, by its own filtering, but also by your emotions and past and conditioning and so many things, right? Your brain, if you, let's go back to the simple example, partner argument on Friday. If I wanted to tell you the facts as an engineer, I would say your partner said A, B, and C. That's the fact. What does your brain tell you? Your brain says he or she doesn't love me anymore. Okay, that's a very, very different narration of events, right? And then it can go on and add drama. It's because I'm working too hard. And then it can add more drama. I'm going to have to be back on dating sites. Okay, I don't have time for datings, right? I'm going to spend the rest of my life alone. Okay, and we're very good at that. Why? By the way, not because your brain is bad. Your brain is trying to protect you. It wants to imagine the worst case scenario and solve it, because if it solves it, then we're okay, no problem at all, right? And you all know that there is a ton of research around the brain's negativity bias. Okay, and the negativity bias basically says that 6 to 7 out of every 10 thoughts in your brain are negative. Can you believe that? 6 to 7 out of every 10 thoughts in the adult brain are negative, which basically is your brain going like, if there is a tiger that shows up here, there are so many facts about that. One of them is it's a beautiful animal with incredible muscle tones. Okay. The second is the celebration that, hey, a tiger for the first time. I've never seen that. Okay. Third is like, oh my God, cute like a cat. Right. And you can go on. There are so many wonderful facts about that tiger. The brain looks for what? Oh my God, we're gonna die. Okay. That's the one fact. Huh? Now, so when you see that, when you realize that, you have to actually start taming that brain, and that's where the flow chart starts. Okay, once you found the thought that is triggering your stress or unhappiness or worry or whatever, it's checkmate. It's 3 steps, and you're done. Okay, just step number 1 is ask the question: is it true? Is it true? Is what my brain telling me true? And the only way to do that is to literally pretend that your brain is a third party, that it's your friend Becky, and your friend Becky is coming to tell you something. Okay, oh, you know what, I saw Jackie and she was okay. Once Becky says that, you go like, come on, Becky, is that true? Right? When your brain tells you he doesn't love me or she doesn't love me anymore, is that true? When your brain tells you I lost the life of a patient, so sorry to use this example, say, is that true, brain? Did I lose the life of a patient, or was I trying my absolute best to save the life of a patient? Okay, did I lose the life of a patient, or did I save 100 patients last week? Okay, and I promise you, the truth is, as a human, you're doing the absolute best that you can. Okay, and the absolute best that you can is changing the lives of the people that you come across, but you're not a god. Okay, and not being a god means that there will be days that will be tough. So sorry to tell you this. You've signed up for it. Okay, and those days that will be tough will be like my tough day when I lost my son. But the first thought that I had, because of my compassion and empathy to that doctor, was my brain said, the doctor killed your son. And I promise you, because of my training, within 2 seconds, I responded and said, which doctor wakes up in the morning to kill a patient? Okay? What would make someone wake up and say, I'm going to kill a patient, get myself in trouble, and end my career? Who does that, right? It's not true, brain. The doctor did not kill my son. The doctor was trying his best to save my son, and mistakes happen, okay? And that's very important to understand in your place, because it's very pressuring and very stressful. If it's not true, drop it. Why would you ever feel stressed or negative about something that's not true? Okay, if it is true, then it's the second question in the flow chart. The second question in the flow chart is, what can I do about it? What can I do about it? Okay, if I made a mistake, and all of you one day will make a mistake, what can I do about that? Can I correct it? Can I improve it? Can I learn so that I don't make it again? Okay. Can I share it with the world so that they learn and become better at dealing with it? Can I? Okay. And that whole idea of can I do something about it, believe it or not, is the ultimate answer to happiness. The ultimate answer to happiness is that when life throws you a fit, you deal with it. And this is why I say happiness is a choice. Okay? Something goes wrong, you deal with it. You stay calm, you stay contented, you ask if it's true. If it is true, you do the best you can to solve it. Okay? Now, this is the black belt of happiness. Jedi Master level of happiness, which is not easy at all, is when things are wrong, it is true, and you cannot do anything about it. Okay? And when things are wrong and you cannot do anything about it, again, like losing a child, nothing I could do could bring him back. Do you understand that? Nothing I could do could bring him back. But there are things I could do that would make my life and the lives of others better, despite the fact that he left. So when Ali left my world, my brain started to say, because I'm his father, I drove him to the hospital. You should have driven him to another hospital. Typical thought of a grieving parent. You should have driven, it's your mistake, you should have driven him to another hospital. Okay? And the truth is, I can't go back in time and drive him to another hospital. It's done. Right? So what do? It is true my son died. It is true I cannot bring him back, so there is nothing I can do about it. But what can I do? I can get up and write a book that shares his story with the world, make it a billion happy mission. Okay? And with that mission, I still don't have my son back. I have the opportunity and joy to talk to you, okay? Which hopefully would save many, many other sons. And when you think about it this way, Ali is not back in my life, but my life is slightly better than the day he left. You understand? And I think the reality of our life is exactly this. The reality of our life is it's a series of challenging events, mixed with a massive amount of joy. We look at the challenging events and forget the joy. Why do we look at them at challenging events? Because we're trained to. And instead of doing something about them or accepting them, as I call it, committed acceptance, the Jedi Master level, we get stuck in them and play them over and over and over to torture ourselves and others. I don't know how to say this in any other way. It's the most stupid thing that humanity's ever done. It's a total waste of your life and it doesn't make anything better. So I end by saying, we can start having questions. I end by saying, it's your duty to find happiness. It's your choice to find happiness, and that happiness is found in one simple fact. Happiness is found in the truth that life is not easy, but that the best of us deal with the most difficult situations with calm and peace. Questions? No questions. Great. Yes.
Thank you. I already said to you that I found your work really inspiring.
Thank you.
Made such a massive difference. It's just really transformational to think that you can have that mastery of your mind. And my question is around the kind of happiness and responsibility bit, which I really, really buy into. But I don't think that necessarily everybody does. And we have good evidence from NHS staff surveys and various evidence bases that actually staff satisfaction is what makes a difference to patient care and also to patient outcomes and mortality. But how do you get buy-in across a business or an organisation like the NHS so that people also, or that the whole organisation buys into that idea that happiness is a responsibility and therefore it's prioritised?
That's a great question, honestly. I mean, in a very interesting way, I'll answer it in two ways, if you don't mind, Emma. One is, neither I nor you are responsible for the organization, okay? To realize that is really important. My way of looking at life is I'm responsible for me, right? And I think if I do well with me and be a good role model and keep staying as a role model and showing results as a role model, eventually people will start to say, how are you doing this? Okay? And my actual being true to myself is what's going to change the world. My son, Habibi Ali, when he was young, my son was very, very, very wise. He spoke very little, but he spoke incredible wisdom. And one day he was 16, I was chief business officer of Google X at the time. Like, it couldn't be bigger, larger than life, okay? And he walks in and he says, Papa, I have something to tell you, but I think you'll be upset. And I knew, of course, I will be upset, but I knew that it was worth it. So I said, tell me, baby, it's okay, right? And so he goes like, promise me you're not going to be upset with me. And I said, just say it. And he said, Papa, you're never going to fix the world. Okay. And in my TED Talk driven mind, I was like, why, Ali? Why don't you have the spark? You should actually have a purpose and work, 10 years of your life to achieve it, and then say it on stage for 18 minutes and then have another purpose, right? And, and he really smiled and he sat down and he said, Papa, you're never going to fix the world. There will always be people dying. There will always be war. Okay. There is always going to be someone unhappy, and it's not within your capability to change the nature of the game of life. All you can do is change your little world. And that stuck with me so much. He said, and your little world is you. If you do that well enough, you may be able to influence me and my sister and my mom. And then if you do that well enough, you may be able to influence your department and then your company and then your country and so on. And damn, he was spot on. Okay, because as I continued to work on my own happiness, I'm starting to influence more and more and more people. So his view is change your little world and the universe will make your little world bigger. Okay, so that would be my first point of view. The second point of view is happiness is not only just the results of patients, and lowered mortalities and so on and so forth. It's also a business. It's probably the biggest business in our universe, believe it or not. Because I worked at Google, and when we worked at Google, the number one target that Larry and Sergey had was let's make people happy. Okay, because making people happy was a very wise business decision. It meant that we hired the best people, that they were the most productive they could be, that they were more approachable, that they could be more creative, that they felt that they belonged, so they didn't churn, and so on and so forth. Sadly, our leadership is in every organization. Don't know the leadership of the NHS, but sadly, as you go higher in the organization, what ends up happening is that you're bombarded with more and more and more and more issues. Okay, and those issues become you get one slice of you dedicated to every one of them, which makes it quite difficult to concentrate on any of them, especially on one that doesn't seem to be influenceable. Because most people, my work says happiness is highly predictable. I can give you reforms and equations and things that you can do in the organization to make people happier. But remember, at the end of the day, happiness is still a choice. Okay, look at the Scandinavian countries, and the Scandinavian countries offer their citizens the highest subjective well-being. The quality of life is the highest they can give, but still suicide rates are some of the highest in the world. So even though the organization, in that case the government, is making life so easy for everyone, people still choose to be unhappy. Unhappiness is a mindset. It's a personal individual choice. And so the other thing I would say is let's start, and I'm happy to engage if I can at all and talk to the leadership if we can. But the idea is, don't start at the very top. Start with little units of departments that start to make happiness their work. And as they engage and as they make happiness their work, they'll shine in a way that makes others go like, how are they doing this? And if they're doing this, then people will copy, I think.
Can I come in on that, actually, just to say, I think that's partly why I thought this talk would be particularly relevant to those of us in this room. I think as pediatric intensivists and as consultants, we have a responsibility to support our teams and to have that inner calm and happiness as much as we can, because there are those real ups and downs that we have to deal with. And I think, I suppose it is about influencing that microcosm. But if you can have your team and the people that you work with understanding that you're supportive of them, you have that inner calm, actually that does have a knock-on effect in a broader group. Yeah. Hopefully improve our outcomes and performance as students as well.
And don't call it happiness. I think that's a little aggravating when you go in to the leadership that are engaged with saving lives and so on, and say about, call it calm and peace, call it contentment, call it what is it like, to be centered. Okay, if that's what we're looking for, I think people will see it more.
then well, I'm not going to have, I'm not having any issues. And you almost, it's really weird. You keep thinking, well, should I feel guilty because I'm not?
Not at all.
There's a whole load of real.
Should feel proud.
Someone telling you that, and it's really. It's weird. And so you have that colleague, but at the same time, I was listening to a podcast early on in the pandemic about kindness, and about how contagious kindness can be. And it was really interesting because people were talking about, well, if you have contact with X many people, they're going to get COVID, blah blah blah. But there's also diagrams which show that if you are kind to to two people, those people will go early on in their day, go and be kind to two people, and all those days will then, influence people's lives. And I think kindness, joy, contentment, I completely agree with you.
It's part of the medicine, honestly. It's part of the, of what we give. Yes.
So I was just going to ask you, in terms of what do you think is the biggest problem with being that happy person? What do you think is the
in life in general?
Yes, is it that people don't make time for it? That actually our lives are kind of too pressurized because you're trying to achieve something that you don't actually make? Because that kind of contemplation and that inner peace takes a quiet place and time to kind of reflect on it.
It's the greatest question ever. So I'll answer this at 3 levels. Okay, level 1, from a categories point of view, I believe that the top 3 categories for unhappiness in the world are: number 3 is relationships, whether they are romantic relationships or friendships or family and so on. Number 2 is ego, the constant attempt for us to be something that we're not. And number 1 is lack of self-love on the individual level. Okay, and we can talk about each of those if you want. On the core level of why we are so unhappy, it's exactly because of what you said. Because of one myth that was planted so deep in our heads when we were young, that said success is more important than happiness, and unhappiness is a reasonable tax to pay for your success. Okay, and so for most of us, we don't even stop to contemplate if it's not right to be unhappy. Okay, for most of us, we actually think, yeah, I'm unhappy and that's fine. Like, I'm dating, I must be unhappy. Right? It's like all the other, everyone, if you're dating a man, then you'll say all men are. And if you're dating a woman, right? And basically that's it. We basically say, but it's fine. That's part of life. Life is supposed to be unhappy. I'm saying it's not at all. Okay, I'm the happiest person you'll ever meet. Happy most of the time. Okay, bounce back time on average from unhappy to happy is 7 seconds. I'm doing really well. Okay, and it's all by choice. It's all by design. It's all by training. I'm an athlete. Okay. For most people, the issue is we don't even care when we're unhappy. We don't even engage. We don't even make a choice and say, I deserve to be happy. Okay? And then the third is practice. Okay, so truly and honestly, the whole game of happiness, and the topic of my next book, really the center of it is the idea of neuroplasticity. Okay, and the idea of neuroplasticity is, if I go to the gym 4 times a week, okay, and lift weights, I'm going to look like a triangle. If I go to the gym 4 times a week and squat, I will look like a pear. Okay, it's as simple as that, right? And that works for your muscles. It also works for your brain. If you switch on the BBC the first thing in the morning and hear the first thing in the morning that there is a corrupt politician, followed by a child that is in distress, followed by a disaster that will take our life, followed by the economic crisis and the war, right? You're going to be so good at finding what's wrong with life. You're going to be very, 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 very good at being afraid, at being worried. Okay, if you do what I do and say half an hour before you go to bed, I take Michael McIntyre to bed with me every night. Okay, I know it sounds really weird, right? But I laugh my head off before I fall asleep, right? And that basically makes me a very ticklish person. Anything makes me laugh. I'm so good at laughing, and it's a practice. It's like going to the gym 4 times a week. Okay, and I tell people, go to the happiness gym 4 times a week. Just take an hour, watch a documentary, listen to a podcast, read a book, spend time with happy people. Okay, that's one thing. And the other thing is stop eating junk. Stop getting negative news into your life. Stop spending time with negative people. Stop. And with neuroplasticity, I promise you, 4 days you feel a difference. 21 days it feels natural. Like I do, I take my projects normally on 4.5 years length. So every part of my training for my brain is a project that I continue for 4.5 years. After 4.5 years, I can't even do the opposite anymore. When I was writing Solve for Happy the first time, my editor, an amazing guy called Peter Guzzardi, basically told me, Mo, this idea of incessant thinking, the repetitive negative thoughts that happen in our brains over and over, that's really good. Can you expand on that and give the reader a few examples? I promise you, I drew a blank. I couldn't come up with a single example. Okay, it's been years for me since my brain, insisted on a negative thought and played it over and over. I have a flow chart. The minute a negative thought comes in, 2 seconds later, I'm asking, what are we going to do about it? Okay, 1 second after that, it's gone. Right? So I had to go to my friends and say, when your brain nags you, can you have examples of that? And they gave me 3 examples that are in the book. One of them, by the way, is Peter's example about his 14-year-old daughter. Okay, and it's really interesting. It's neuroplasticity is the key to changing your habits, changing your behavior, and accordingly growing the muscles that you need to find happiness. Happiness is just another muscle.
So that sounds a little bit similar to what.
Are the others not interested? I mean,
it sounds a bit similar to what Joe Dispenza says. That
yes.
95% of the thoughts that you have are the same as the thoughts that you had yesterday, such that by your mid-30s, how your brain thinks every day is basically based on your previous conditioning. And I just wonder, in order to get yourself out of that and into something more positive, you said it takes 4 days, but what kind of time commitment do you think it takes an average person either to spend, 5 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, how many times a day?
Great. So again, 2 levels of the question. What does it take to understand that? I was just recording, actually it was released today, my second podcast with Stephen Bartlett. And he was talking about that. How do you find your conditioning? How do you find that something is wrong, that something is not in balance? And I always say there is a triangle. Okay, there are your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. Okay, if they're aligned, that's your nature. If they are not aligned, then something is wrong and you need to contemplate. If your thought is I need to work harder, but your emotion is I feel I'm a victim, and your actions are I'm so tired I want to sleep. Okay, or even if your actions are I want to work harder, but if there is one of the 3 that is falling out of sync, you have to stop and say what. Okay, and we, just as a teaser, we were using this on a very interesting example about my relationships, my romantic relationships. Okay, and the idea is that there is a triangle. My mind is saying you should do this, my heart is saying you should do that, and my actions are saying you should do something else. Once you get that, you know that something needs to be revisited. That has no time limit on it. It could take you a minute, okay? It could take you a moment when you're in the tube to realize it, okay? Or it could take you hours and hours and hours of contemplation. This is why monks would spend days alone, okay? Now, once you've done that, there are very, very important practices. So I can share with you tons of practices. My most important practice is my morning practice, okay? I am absolutely certain that if you guys had asked for this talk to be 9 a.m., that Munir would have said no, okay? Because my most important practice is my morning practice. I wake up in the morning, okay? And I have a few things to honor my body, to honor my spirit, and to honor my mind, and to honor my emotions, okay? Every one of us humans is made up of those 4, okay? So when I wake up in the morning, my phone is not going to be touched for the first hour. I will not touch my phone, okay? When I wake up slowly and I stretch, okay? And I drink water and I take my time and I do nothing at all. And yes, of course, what if I have an appointment at 8 a.m. and like most of you will need to go to work, I wake up an hour earlier, which means I sleep an hour even earlier, okay? Then I meditate, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, whatever you want. Okay. Frequently, I have 3 times a week, I have an exercise that I call Meet Becky. Okay. And so for those of you who don't know, I call my brain Becky. I treat Becky like a third party. Okay. And we have regular one-to-ones 3 times a week. Okay. And the regular one-to-ones are probably one of the most valuable exercises I've ever done in my life. I sit with my brain, and instead of meditation, which is trying to calm your brain and focus it on something other than thought, I let Becky go loose. Okay, I basically tell her, tell me anything that's going on in your mind. And when Becky starts to talk, something amazing happens. I have 2 rules. Rule number 1 is I will acknowledge every thought and ask for another one. I will not hold on to it. And rule number 2 is nothing can be repeated. Very simple. Okay, so I start and my brain, Becky, goes, oh, you have a talk at the NHS today. Oh yeah, we have a talk 9:45. Correct. And I actually allow myself a paper and a pen. By the way, remember to text Aya, my daughter, to tell her A, B, and C. Sure, text Aya. You're bored. Yeah, I know. Thank you. I'm bored. Okay. Yeah, we're craving that little whatever sandwich. Sure, craving the sandwich. By the way, Emma, what Emma said yesterday, that was really hurtful. Interesting. I don't say anything. I say, sure, Emma said something hurtful. What else? Right? And I keep going, keep going, keep going. And believe it or not, what happens is your brain very quickly goes like, oh, she's listening. Okay? I might as well say something intelligent. Right? And your brain starts to literally slow down until it comes down to a drip. And then I go like, what else? And it goes like, you're bored. And I say, yeah, you said that before. Okay? We're not allowed to repeat things. And it goes completely silent. Completely. It's the best moment of meditation. It's literally the most joyful moment in your life. Okay? Because I'm no longer actively trying to calm my brain through meditation. My brain suddenly realizes I have nothing to say. Incredible feeling. I continue the exercise for the 25 minutes. Normally, I find that calm around minute 11, 12. Okay? And I continue until the 25 minutes are over. And then I take 5 minutes to look at the notes and laugh my head off. Okay? Like, where did that come from? Like, how did that thought even manifest itself? Right? And for some of those thoughts, actually, there are actions to be taken. Right? So some of those thoughts actually prove to be true. Right? And so I take those actions. I slot them in my calendar. I get things done, and so on and so forth. Right? That exercise is really, really important for me. And the third thing, as I said, my morning is what matters most to me, is I make a very good coffee. I never drink a bad coffee. Okay? And I make it as per what I feel that day. I told you part of the exercise is to honor your body, your emotions. Huh? Some mornings you wake up and you're like a little tired. Other mornings you wake up and you're energetic. Other mornings you wake up and you're a child. So the mix between how creamy and how strong and how sweet my coffee is I've never had the same coffee twice in my life. Okay? And I would taste it, and if it's not exactly how I feel, that's a very interesting exercise. I throw it away and make another one. Okay? And that takes me literally, my coffee ritual is 15 minutes of silence. Okay? Where the only person I'm talking to is my body. It's a very, very interesting exercise. So that adds up to an hour. And within that hour, I have connected to me before I jump into the madness of the modern world. Having done that, normally my second favorite part of the day is to write for 3 hours, if I could. Today I couldn't, but if I can, I will write for 3 hours. I'll check my phone very quickly, but answer nothing, and then write for 3 hours, and then start my day at noon. So that's my current ritual. The other ritual, by the way, I talk so much. The other ritual, by the way, is dig deep and find your biggest reason for unhappiness. Okay? This is the single most important exercise. Most of us, 90% of our unhappiness is because of one thing or two. Okay? Find that one and work on it. And then find the next one, and then find the next one. And don't find that one in terms of, I feel unhappy when I'm sitting with Jackie. Okay? Find out why are you unhappy when you're feeling with Jackie. Is it a mismatch of morals or values? Is it your ego hurting for some reason? Is it fear of something? Is it whatever? Okay? And there are basic human emotions, fear, envy, whatsoever. Okay? Basic negative human emotions. Find out which one it is. And if you see that repetitive pattern, work on that one only. Work on it with a friend if you want. Okay? 21 days, it's out of your way. Then it continues in practice for 4.5 years. And then you take the next one and the next one. And text me on Instagram if you want. I think that would also help. Anything else? I have all the time in the world, but kick me out when you want to. Yeah.
One more question.
Yeah.
It's not a question so much, it's just a statement. I actually read your book, Soul for Happy, last year, and I think it's incredibly inspiring. And I just wanted to say thank you. And to anyone around here that would be interested, I definitely would recommend reading the book. I think it's going to be incredible. Thank you for coming to the show.
Yeah, it's my absolute honor, my absolute pleasure. I hope I made a difference. And yeah, honestly, if you have more questions, just text me on Instagram. I answer in voice notes, and I am told that my voice is nice. So there you go. Thank you. All right, thank you very much.